Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Let's go ahead and talk about my top 10 books of 2023 so far. And it wouldn't be a top 10 list without a couple of honorable mentions. These honorable mentions aren't actually books that got very close to being in my top 10, but they are just a couple of stories that I read that I wanted to highlight for one reason or another. And the first one will be A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms by George R.R. Martin. I gave this a 3-star rating, and I wanted to highlight this one because I think it will make a great adaptation. I actually made a whole video on that, but yeah, I think HBO has a real winner here in this world, and I'm really looking forward to that. The next two stories I want to highlight are from The Expanse. I gave both of these 3 stars as well, and these are 2 short stories set later on in the Expanse series. They are Oberon and Strange Dogs. Both of these short stories really help expand the lore and the world and just kind of give you a peek inside of what's going on outside of the main narrative. And I think they are really great additions to the story. Another story I want to highlight, and this was actually one of the first things I read this year, was Hellmouth by Giles Christensen. This is another story I think would make a really good movie adaptation. It would have to be done the right way, but I could really see this being a really dark, gritty kind of movie done by A24. I saw a review from somebody who said that, and I wish I could remember who it was, but I completely agree. Something along the lines of, I think it's The Northman they did. I think a similar style to that would work really well with Hellmouth, and with it being so short, I recommend that one pretty heavily. The last honorable mention is actually number 11 on my list, so it just missed the cutoff, but that is Leviathan Falls. This is a great ending to such an epic story. I really enjoyed the series as a whole, and if you are worried about a bad ending, do not fear, because I think this book wrapped up the series really well. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the top 10. In the 10th place spot, we have The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. I gave this 4-star, and this is the second book in the first Mistborn trilogy. Overall, I liked all of Mistborn Era 1, but this was the weakest of the 3 to me. I don't know why. It wasn't even like middle book syndrome. I mean, I guess there was a little bit of that, but it was still a really good story, really liked it overall, and that is why it is in number 10. Number 9, and this might be a surprise, I don't know how many people would agree with this, but I actually have The Bands of Mourning, which is book 3 in Mistborn Era 3, or in Era 2, which is normally not as highly praised as Mistborn Era 1, so I'll be curious on how many people would actually have an Era 2 book mixed in above an Era 1 book. But yeah, I really thought especially the ending of this story was really great, and I haven't gotten around to doing my review for it yet, but overall it gave me a lot of things that I was wanting out of Era 2, and I think that kind of pushed it up my list even more. Sticking with Brandon Sanderson, we actually have The Hero of Ages here at spot number 8. I thought this was a really good ending to the trilogy. Not everything worked for me. At some points I thought it dragged a little bit, but overall I really liked it. I did give it 4 stars. And yeah, I was pretty happy with the conclusion. It kind of blew my mind a little bit when you get to like the very end of the series here. But yeah, overall, once again, a really great book. At number 7, we have Goldfinger by Ian Fleming. I also gave this book 4 stars, and this was I think this was probably the last really, really good James Bond book I read at that point. The series didn't end for me the way I would have liked. It definitely kind of took some steps down as the series went on. But Goldfinger was a really good example of what James Bond can be in novel form. And, I'm glad there were still some good books as the series went on. But yeah, Goldfinger definitely deserved its spot at number 7. Just outside of the top 5, the first book I ever got as a booktuber, The Never-Ending End of the World by Anne Christie. This was a really fun sci-fi read. I did a full review for it, but I really think this is a book that will be best served if you go in completely blind with really no information about it, because even some tiny spoilers, I think, kind of take away some of the tension. This isn't a perfect story. I definitely have questions that weren't answered as well as I would have liked. This is definitely a story you could poke holes through and just kind of wonder how the world itself is working, but this is definitely a story where if you're willing to go with the flow and just kind of enjoy it as it comes to you, it'll be really great. It's a great dystopian sci-fi story, and very different from a lot of other ones I've read. So yeah, definitely recommend this one as well. And getting into the top 5, we have The Way of Kings, book 1 of the Stormlight Archive, also by Brandon Sanderson, and I also gave this one 4 stars as well. not much to say. You know, this is a fantastic book. I really liked it. Really kicked off Stormlight. This was a book I was very you know, highly anticipated for me, and I was almost worried that it wouldn't be able to live up to the hype. I do think that the first 35-ish, 40% of this book is a little confusing. I didn't really know what was going on. I couldn't really get my head around it, and I was worried. I was like, oh no, am I going to be one of those people who doesn't like Stormlight? And fortunately, that was not the case. By 50-60% of this book, I was hooked, and that last 40%, just, you know, some of the best writing I have experienced, some of the best storytelling. It was an awesome experience, and I'm glad I finally got around to doing Stormlight. In fourth place, and the last 4-star on this list, is The Final Empire, the first book in the Mistborn Era 1 trilogy, and I thought Mistborn kicked off with the best book. This is far and away my favorite of those bunch. I don't know if it was maybe so early on in my Sanderson journey. I really appreciated the way he built his world, the magic system, just everything about it. And I guess I really liked the end of this book. It really caught me by surprise. I really thought we were going to kind of get a cookie cutter fantasy story with a big bad, and you know, that's how this trilogy was going to go. And it really changed the expectations I had for it. And so I think that is why I ranked this so highly at number 4. At number 3, we have Boy's Life by Robert McCannon. And I read this right before I started my BookTube channel, and I gave this 5 stars. And when I read this book, I really did not think that there were going to be one book above it, let alone 2. So that's how good I thought this story was. Big nostalgia feelings from it, a fun story, coming to age, just, you know, everything just worked for me. And this is definitely a story that probably won't work for everybody, but if it's a story that like ticks the boxes you like, I don't see how you don't love this story. Like I said, really like nostalgic childhood stuff in this story that just really resonated with me, that, you know, really bumped it up for me, made me cry. It was just such an awesome time. I'm so glad I read it, which is funny. I read Boy's Life because I read it, and they get compared a lot as coming to age tales between Stephen King and Robert McCannon. So, you know, what a great journey that's been. And I definitely am looking forward to reading more from McCannon. Maybe later this year, I don't know. I would like to read Swan Song and The Stand kind of close to each other, but those are both very long books. So we'll see if I can make that happen. At spot number 2 is the second book in the Stormlight Archive, Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. This was just such an awesome book. It has some of the best, like, fist-pumping, like, I don't even know how to explain it the proper way, but, like, you're just so happy. It has some, like, hyped moments, maybe is the best way to say it, where some things are happening and you're just like, oh, this is just so awesome. It almost kind of gave me, like, anime vibes a little bit, where, like, a hero steps up to the plate and, like, over-delivers. And yeah, I really loved this story. It has probably my new favorite character of the year in Shalon. She really cemented her place as my favorite from this story. So yeah, once again, I don't think I need to say too much about Stormlight because so many people love it, but I'm one of those people. I am with the popular crowd with this opinion. And my number 1 book for the year, Book 8 of The Expanse, Time Match Wrath. Not only is this my number 1 book this year, this is my number 2 book I have read since I started keeping track of my reading in 2019. This is a book that I still constantly think about. This is the kind of book where every single page just delivered in a way that I loved. So many things that I wanted to see happen, and just a lot of it was character driven, and man, just everything about it was great. I think this book alone is worth reading The Expanse, which is a big investment. I mean, you know, it's not a short story. I actually made a whole video about should you read The Expanse, and honestly, to me, with how good this book is, I think it's worth it. I don't know if that's the popular opinion among the fan base, but it's my opinion, and I think this is the best book I have read this year. If another book knocks this out of first place for this year, I will honestly be super surprised. I don't think it'll happen. I think this will probably be my number 1 book at the end of the year. I would love for something to beat it, because honestly, if something beat it, it might end up being my favorite book of all time. That's how good a book would have to be to beat this. So yeah, once again, Time Match Wrath by James S.A. Corey, 5-star, absolutely loved it, and is definitely my best book of 2020. 2023 so far. That is my top 10 list though. I hope you enjoyed, and let me know your top 10 list down in the comments. I'd love to see what you guys are reading, and if you think my list is trash, let me know. I'd love to see why a book I picked isn't as good as I think it is. I think that'd be interesting to see. But that's all for me, and have a good one.